Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show lined up for you. Let's get right on into it. All right, folks, could a perfect storm lead to Josh Heupel's exit? This is not going to be a fun show for some folks to watch, but there has been some talk about Josh Heupel possibly going to Oklahoma. It's not been a ton of talk, but led to an article by Zach Reagan of A to Z Sports, and it came from Chris Lowe talking about it and being asked about it on the next round. And we're going to get into that and talk about, could there be a perfect storm that would lead to this? And you have to have a lot of things happen. But we just saw Nico Iamaleava leave Tennessee, and who would have thought a guy with a 3-year, $8 million deal coming off a decent redshirt freshman year would bolt and take a 50% pay cut going to UCLA, who was 118th in offense last year. So crazy things happen in college football, folks. And in this story, it starts out with "You never say never." It talks about college football insider dishes on chances Josh Heupel leaves Tennessee for Oklahoma if Brent is fired. Now, as you know, Brent had a losing season last year, 6-7 to Oklahoma. Now, the Oklahoma Sooners, they're not used to losing. They've been a very blue-bloodish type program for a long time, and they sell out every game, and they got a lot of oil money. So it's not like they're, struggling financially. They can make moves. And I don't, if you had another losing season, it could get a little rough there at Oklahoma land. He starts out the article, "Would Tennessee Josh ever leave Rocky Top to become the Sooners coach?" And Brent's entering his fourth season, again, 6-7 in 2024. It talks about how another losing season could result in him getting fired. And, of course, Heupel won a national title there as a quarterback. So, he's not somebody that's not loved in Oklahoma. Now, there is the whole thing with Bob Stoops and that situation where he was fired as an offensive coordinator. Well, he was scapegoated, honestly. His brother was a defensive coordinator, and his defense didn't perform as well as the offense. But, of course, he wasn't going to fire his brother. And he had forced Josh Heupel to go with an offense that Texas A&M had with Johnny Football, Manziel, and he wanted to run that offense, and he forced Josh to change the offense to that and then fired him because of it. So I'm sure Josh has a lot of anger over that. I know I would. If you forced me to do an offense that I didn't want to do and then fired me afterwards because it didn't work because I didn't have Johnny Manziel, I'd be pissed. Well, anyway, Chris Lowe appeared on the next round, and he was asked about it. And, of course, he didn't think that he would, but he also didn't rule it out completely.
Hey, so Chris, random, but we were talking Tennessee football on our 40 and 40 today, and we were talking specifically Josh Heupel. He's won 30 games over his last 3 years. You probably know the story more than we do, the backstory between the bad beef with his alma mater, Oklahoma. But we were talking about if Venables did struggle and had a 5-7, there's a possibility Oklahoma would make a change. Is there any world that you think Josh Heupel would leave Tennessee and go back to Oklahoma?
I don't think so. I think, Josh is pretty private guy. He didn't talk a lot about that type thing, but I think there's a clear disconnect between he and his alma mater. Now that said, he's still very close to a lot of the guys he played with there. In fact, several of them were there last year, and some of them on the Tennessee sideline. So he still has a real deep appreciation and connection with a lot of the guys he played with. I don't know that, though, he would go back there and be head coach. I think that you never say never, right? You look at some of the things around college sports that have happened. I mean, would you have ever thought Bobby Petrino would be back at Arkansas?
No, not at all. That's a good point.
So,
yeah. Bobby Petrino being back at Arkansas, look, I've told you folks, I think that's just a switcheroo getting ready to happen. I think he's the head coach in waiting. Yeah, it's just a matter of if you can get the weight just right before that ball chases you down. But, yeah, I mean, he would have said the same thing about Nico leaving. I don't think it's really possible. Nico took off. So I want to make sure that the Tennessee fans, and we're going to talk about it at the end, that there needs to be an awareness of this. And he does talk about the Nico issue and the fact that, at some point Josh Heupel might get blamed for this, although I don't think he's going to receive any blame, nor should he. the Nico thing could lead to a worse season this year. We don't know. We don't know what Joey Aguilar is going to do. We don't know what Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre might do. George is a true freshman, skinny as a rail. I don't look for him to do much this year. I don't think they want him to. But Jake Merklinger, we're not sure. He'd be a redshirt freshman. So 4-star, pretty good player. But this SEC, man. So you never know.
From Birmingham, Alabama, looking to Knoxville, after the way he handled the Nico situation, Chris, it seemed like in spite of getting blown out in the playoffs, whatever the case might be, Josh Heupel had to be pretty close to a 100% approval rating by his fan base because he reacted the way I think every fan wanted to react to that. A, do you believe that to be the case? I mean, was he close to as 100% as you could probably get as a college football coach? But B, how long does that goodwill normally last in a place like Knoxville, Tennessee?
Well, I mean, it lasts until they can't throw the football in the second half, and they're 0 for 7 on third down, and the pass game just stinks. And then it's like, well, they should have worked harder to patch things up with Nico Iamaleava. You guys know how it works in the SEC. But no, I think at the time, Josh did what he had to do. He didn't have much of a decision, really. I mean, it would have been much different had the kid gone to practice that Friday, gone to the spring game the next day, and then sat out on Sunday with the collective and whomever and said, hey, let's work this out. If we can't work it out, I'm leaving. Maybe Tennessee meets him halfway, maybe they don't. But when you ghost everybody in the program, your teammates, your coaches, your coach trying to get in touch with you that whole day, Heupel didn't answer his calls, there's no choice. I mean, you bring him back into the locker room as your quarterback, you give him another $500,000 or whatever, $1 million, and you bring him back in your locker room, you lose your whole locker room. But memories are short in the SEC. And if they don't play well at the quarterback position and struggle on offense, there'll be some people saying, well, Tennessee, Josh Heupel should have been a little bit more forward thinking. They shouldn't have let it get to that point.
Yeah, and that's the deal. There's going to be a bunch of negative Nellies if things don't go well, because if you don't play well at quarterback, at least solid in the SEC, you're going to lose games you shouldn't lose, especially on the road. We've got Oklahoma. We actually got Oklahoma coming to Neyland. That's going to be an important game. You got to go to Kentucky. We got to go to Florida in the swamp, to Alabama. There's a lot of road games that could get tricky if you don't play good at quarterback, because understand the defense. The thing about a defense is they can only withstand so much. If you're not driving the ball, one of the things we did really well was we ran the ball last year really well, extremely well. And that kept the ball away from the other team's offense for quite a spell, even longer than normal, because usually we don't have the ball that long. And that takes some pressure off the defense. At some point, your defense can only hold up for so long. If they're out there the whole game, and by the fourth quarter, they're going to get roasted. You can just count on it. So that quarterback position, there's nothing more important than quarterback. There just isn't. There is no second. There's third, there's fourth, but first and second's quarterback. So I could see a scenario where Tennessee could struggle, if Joey Aguilar doesn't play well or Merklinger doesn't. We don't know. There's big question marks on that. We kind of felt like we knew where the floor was with Nico, which would have been last year's numbers, which were okay. They weren't bad. But we thought he'd make a good jump this year, and he probably would have had he not let his emotions control him. Now let's talk about what it would take for Brent Venables to be released. If he went 4-8, 5-7, there's going to be a ton of pressure. 2 losing seasons in a row at Oklahoma, that would be rough. Now, the buyout's pretty strong, and you're talking about, having to come up with $20.5 million every year to pay your players out of revenue. It's not NIL only anymore. This is money out of the athletic department. And there's no offsetting revenue to go with that. And there's going to be more scholarship expenses as well. Because the thing about a scholarship is, we're going from 85 to 105 at some point. SEC hadn't decided on that, but you can go as much as that according to the settlement. And that's the same situation in baseball. Basketball can go from 13 to 15. There's more scholarships. Well, understand every one of those scholarships have to be paid for by the athletic department. They actually write a check and send it to the University of Tennessee, for example. So if you've got 30, 40 more scholarships in various sports, or it could be up to as many as 100, that's a lot more expense. It could be $3, $4, $5 million bucks. So we're getting in a difficult financial situation. To come up with $35 million might be tricky, but you go 4-8 at Oklahoma, it's going to get real ugly. And a journalist talked about the buyout here from Oklahoma. And here on Stormin' and Norman, talks about a longtime columnist, tips Josh Heupel as Sooners' top choice for the next football coach. Yeah, and here they discuss it on Saturday Down South. They've interviewed Barry Trammell, who's the longtime sports writer who discusses this.
If Venables does indeed get fired, and I'm not saying that's this year, would you ever expect Oklahoma to just write Josh Heupel a blank check to return to Norman?
He'd be the first call, I assume. I have no idea if Josh would entertain the notion or accept. I have no idea. I do know this: he still has a lot of ties. Family still lives here. His sister married the son of David Boren, the 24-year OU president, prominent president. David Boren died last year, but Josh's son-in-law, his brother-in-law, is a former United States congressman, prominent Oklahoman. So they got a lot of Oklahoma ties still. So I don't think he would dismiss it.
Yeah. So, like I said, Josh Heupel will be their first call. I mean, they would definitely call him if they fired Brent Venables. And, whether or not they would tamper, I don't see Josh Heupel going along with any tampering. But, back channels are back channels. And Josh Heupel he's got a good agent. He's a guy that gets his guys a lot of money. If he did go to Oklahoma, it would probably be $10, $11, $12 million a year because he's making $9 million here. And I can tell you right now, the Oklahoma fans that are out there, if they have a second losing season, they're going to be screaming for Josh Heupel. You can count on it.
But I know deep down inside that all of you Tennessee fans are scared. You're all scared to death of this game. And you don't even know why you're scared, because you're all typing in comments, we're not going to lose the game. We're not going to lose the game. Oh, no. You're not scared of losing the game. You're scared of winning the game. What's this idiot Oklahoma fan talk about? We're scared to win. We're going to beat you we're going to put 70 points like we did on Kent State and all this. No. I know your biggest fear, Tennessee fans. I know what keeps you up at night. I know what you do when you stare up at the ceiling, what you think about when it comes to September 21st. But you know deep down inside why you're scared. If you win this game, and you win it like that, you're afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. See, Tennessee fans, they don't want Brent Venables to fail. They want Brent Venables to succeed. See, if Brent Venables fails, that means Oklahoma will need a new head coach. And who's a head coach that's hot right now that has ties to the University of Oklahoma? Y'all know who I'm talking about. Your big boy Josh. We love Josh Heupel. All week we've seen clips from 2000 and people putting up interviews from the old college game days back then. That's how long college game days been, even longer than that. But Josh Heupel was a hero. He was a god here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and that guy is very connected to Oklahoma fans. When you cover that team like a YouTuber does, you hear from everybody in the comment section. And look, they're going to be screaming for Josh Heupel. I'll go ahead and tell you. Now, the athletic department heads might not be, because $35 million bucks, having to deal with the financials of it, and it's a different animal, because you'd have to come with a lot of money to get Heupel. You got to, there's buyout clauses and all kinds of stuff like that they'd have to pay Tennessee. It'd be super expensive. But
haven't you noticed? You got to be a man to play in my league.
Expensive. But the fan base doesn't care about that. They're just going to be yelling, get Heupel, get Heupel. So, is there a scenario where that could happen? Look, if we have some god-awful year, for some reason quarterback just doesn't work out for us, and, we go 6-6, something like some horrible situation, which that would be for a Josh Heupel team. We're used to averaging 10 wins the last 3 years. But let's say something awful happens and we go 6-6. There's going to be a bunch of Tennessee fans pissed. And they're going to be blaming Heupel for not paying Nico or not thinking further ahead. You know, you should have had a guy ready to go, all that kind of stuff, which is 20/20 vision. Everybody's got 20/20 vision when hindsight, everybody. And, oh, well, you should have, jumped ahead of this Nico thing. Well, look, nobody could have predicted that Nico was going to do that. I mean, it was one of the dumbest moves in the world. And look what it's done to him. A 50% pay cut, and he doesn't have near the talent around him at UCLA, and he's still got to play in the Big Ten. And he's going to have a lot of tough ball games. Cam Newton said it best about him.
Whoever gave him the advice to sit out killed that kid. Regardless of how you bounce back from this, you will be the example. He will have this as a stain on his career, and it's sad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, put him in a bad spot. Urban Meyer talked about it the other day. So, I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to make double sure that Tennessee fans understand something. This is happening over here. See, I didn't cover the Nico thing early on back in December and January because I thought, this would blow over. He's not going anywhere. He's going to leave a 3-year, $8 million deal. He's the starting quarterback at a big-time program, and nobody was going to pay him $4 million, and I knew that based on the year that he just had. And everybody had their quarterbacks. So I didn't think much to cover it. That was kind of a mistake, really. I should have been ringing the alarm bell. And they could have headed this off maybe. I don't know what I could have done, really. I mean, maybe we're better off with him gone anyway. But we wouldn't be better off with Josh Heupel being gone. I can guarantee you that.
Believe that.
So I'm going to make sure that people are aware, and if Oklahoma tries any trickery and tries to tamper or anything like that, I'm going to be yelling and screaming. I can go ahead and tell you, we're not going to be caught off guard if anything were to happen like that. And I've already told you, I'll put a blockade up there at Farragut, even if we had a 6-6 year. Heupel's not going anywhere. I will not allow it. Look, Joey Aguilar may be great. We don't know. He may come in here and do a Hendon Hooker, who, two of my favorite people over the last several years has been Josh Heupel and Hendon Hooker. Maybe Joey Aguilar's the next Hendon. We don't know. Or a Hendon Light. Whoa! That would be just fine. But I'm not going to lose Josh Heupel over one poor year if it does happen, because a small percentage of our fan base, 10 or 15% of them, are extremely loud. I may have to drown them out. Don't think I won't. Anyway, if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover all these big college sports stories. If you've not subscribed, boom, 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 hit that button right there. Won't cost you a dime. It'll help you get my videos. And right over here's the most recent video, YouTube. Thanks, you'll enjoy. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk J. And you're not going anywhere, Josh.
Where do you think you're going? Nobody's leaving. Nobody's walking out on this fun, old-fashioned family Christmas. No, we're all in this together. This is a